From the editors of Cook's Illustrated magazine, it's America's Test Kitchen. With your host, Christopher Kimball. Featuring Test Kitchen chefs Julia Collin-Davison, Bridget Lancaster, Becky Hayes, with Adam Reed in the Equipment Corner and Jack Bishop in the Tasting Lab. Discover the secrets of America's foremost food testers and tasters today on America's Test Kitchen. Today on America's Test Kitchen, Bridget reveals the secrets to making the ultimate beef kebabs. Next, Jack challenges Chris to a tasting of Greek yogurt. Finally, Brian uncovers the Test Kitchen secrets for perfect spanakopita. That's all right here on America's Test Kitchen. America's Test Kitchen is brought to you by DCS by Fisher & Paykel. America's cooks rely on innovation and culinary precision. DCS by Fisher & Paykel, offering premium indoor and outdoor kitchen appliances. For over 50 years, Miracle-Gro products have helped home chefs grow fresh vegetables and herbs. Miracle-Gro soils and plant foods provide the essential nutrients plants need to grow bountiful produce. Gardening tips are available online at miraclegro.com. By Cooking.com, an online retailer for the kitchen enthusiast. If it's not in your kitchen, try ours. Chateau Saint Michel. Digital wine cellar and pairings can be found online. From our hands to your table. Recipes available at californiaavocado.com. And by Kohler. Diamond Crystal Salt, the gourmet choice. Plum Amazins from Sunsweet.
It's summertime, it's hot, it's time for beer and kebabs. You go to the supermarket, pick up some kebab meat, you go home with some skewers, you throw in some vegetables and your trusty bottle of Italian salad dressing. Pour that on for, say, half an hour. Get that grill nice and hot, throw in the grill, come back in a few minutes, and voila, you have the full range of cooking experience, from charred on the outside to raw on the inside, and the veggies, they're only half cooked, forget al dente. Let's go into the test kitchen with Bridget and figure out how to make great grilled kebabs. So today in America's Test Kitchen, we're going to grill beef kebabs. We tested about 200 pounds of meat to figure out which cut we liked. And the one we liked the most was steak tips. Now, the problem with steak tips is they might come from a variety of different places in the animal. There's only one cut we really like. It's called the flap meat or flap steak. And the flap cut is about in here. So no matter what it's called in the supermarket, it's about a 2-pound piece. And here's what you look for, this grain. And when you see that grain, you know you have flap meat. Let's bring in Bridget, who will now do something with this.
Yeah, I'm going to do all the work.
I do the talking, you do the cooking.
That's how it goes. I think I know it by now. All right, so this is one big piece of flat meat. So we're going to cut this into 2-inch chunks. And this is where a lot of kebab recipes go wrong. They cut it into teeny tiny little bits of meat, and they basically disappear on the grill. If you find that the meat thins out in certain parts, once we thread it onto the kebab skewers, we can kind of fold it so that it's in nice plump pieces. Put this in a big bowl. So, for this particular recipe, we went through pretty much the whole crisper drawer. What we found that we liked best was zucchini, onion, and pepper. They really retain their flavor on the grill. So this is one zucchini. We've washed it, got rid of all that grit that you find on it. Just want to trim off the ends. Then we'll cut it right in half lengthwise. So I'm going to cut this into about 1-inch pieces. I'll go ahead and start putting these in another bowl. Now on to pepper. So we basically want to trim this, so I'll just cut off the top and bottom. Easiest way to do this. And then I'll open it up. That way I can get rid of any of these seeds. I'm also going to trim away any of the ribs here because the ribs can have a little bit of bitterness to them, so we want to get rid of those. Now we're going to cut these pieces into about 1.5-inch squares. So
let me see if I got this right. So we actually tested different sizes of each of these vegetables, so they all end up cooking at the same rate?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure.
Yep, there is a method to my madness. So I'll put this in the bowl. Now we really like sweet onion, or you can use red onion here. That's the best bet. So I'm just going to put this flat side down and cut right through the center, just like that. Now, each of these halves I want to cut into quarters, right? So the easiest way is to cut it right in half. I like to squish it back together. It makes it a bit more stable. And then cut each half in half again, just like that. All right, so after cutting this lengthwise into quarters, I'm gonna cut right across just like that. So speaking of marinade, let's shove on down over here. So we're gonna let the blender do all the work, which I love. And we'll start off with our flavorings for this marinade. This is 1 medium onion, just roughly chopped. You can use any kind of onion pretty much for that. And 6 cloves of garlic, that's roughly half a head. A lot of flavor. This is 2 teaspoons of grated lemon zest, and we really like the flavor of lemon, but you don't want to use lemon juice. Acids have kind of a funky effect on food when it's marinated in an acid. And this is 2 tablespoons of chopped rosemary leaves. Lovely flavor. And this is a 1/3 cup of vegetable oil, just a nice neutral flavored oil. And oil is essential to not only help to keep the exterior of the foods nice and moist on the grill, but many of these flavor compounds are actually oil soluble. So as they're heated with the oil, they'll release more of their flavor. Got 2 teaspoons of table salt, and we prefer to use just table salt over kosher salt. It dissolves easier here. And 3/4 teaspoon of ground black pepper, and 1½ teaspoons of sugar. And sugar is going to really help with caramelization on the grill. Now, what you don't see here is soy sauce.
It's bottle salad dressing, like I said.
Yeah, but for our marinades, we tend to go towards soy sauce. We love its flavor. It actually has a compound in it called glutamate. Glutamates often translate to really deep, meaty flavor. Unfortunately, especially with the rosemary, it tasted like rosemary teriyaki sauce. We didn't really like that. So instead, we found another ingredient that uses glutamates, and that's tomato paste. This is 3 tablespoons. Let's see if I can get that out of there. And we're also going to add 1/3 cup of low-sodium beef broth. Now, this also has a meaty flavor. Hopefully, it's beef broth. That would be a problem if it didn't. All right, so let's let the blender do the work. Lid on tight, about 45 seconds. If I need to straighten down the sides, I'll do that. All right, that ought to do it. Nicely blended. So we're going to use this in 2 places. I'm going to take 3/4 cup of this fabulous marinade. All right, we'll toss it with our vegetables here. I'm gonna go ahead and pour it right over these. And then I'll start adding in the onion. I do wanna get rid of this core.
So the core is just too tough, even when it's cooked on the grill, it's gonna be...
It also makes the pieces of onion too thick, so they won't cook at an even rate. All right, so let's gently toss this together. Let's get a little bit of plastic on this. We're gonna let this sit here at room temperature. And Chris, you want to go ahead and pour the rest of that marinade right into the beef? You say marinade or marinade?
Tomato.
Just toss this so that's well coated. I'm going to cover this with plastic as well, nice and tight. Now, this is going to have to go into the refrigerator for about an hour. Let all those flavors work their way into the meat.
Okay. Meanwhile, let's talk a little bit about marinades and why they don't work most of the time. They don't work most of the time because marinades don't actually penetrate very far into meat, about 1/4 inch. And they also turn the meat mushy. They don't actually make it juicier or more tender, especially because of the acids, as Bridget just mentioned. So how do you get marinades that penetrate into meat and actually add flavor? Well, use our marinade. Our marinade has 2 things going for it. First of all, salt, table salt, sodium chloride, does penetrate, and that's why we brine turkeys and chicken and pork. So the salt will penetrate into the meat. There's something else going on in this marinade as well, glutamates. Tomato paste is full of glutamates, so that gets into the meat, adds flavor. There's one other trick. There are 2 flavor-enhancing molecules in beef broth, the glutamates, of course, but there's also something called nucleotides. They enhance the flavor of glutamates by a factor of about 20. So you have the salt getting into the meat, you have the glutamates that have flavor, and the nucleotides boost that flavor by a factor of 20. So now you have a marinade that actually works.
All right, so the meat has marinated for an hour. It's ready for our skewers. Now we're gonna build our kebabs slightly different from most recipes. I mean, most recipes will take the beef and the vegetables all onto the same skewer. You end up with meat either overcooked or burnt to a crisp, and the vegetables tend to overcook and they fall apart. So therefore, we're gonna put all the meat on 2 skewers and thread the vegetables onto 2 other skewers.
We're not too bright here at America's Test Kitchen. We did figure this out. Different cooking rates, different skewers.
That's right.
Okay. Well.
So before we thread these onto the skewers, the meat, we wanna dry them off because if we were to put them right on the grill as is, they would steam rather than get that nice char that we're looking for. So just plop them out on the sheet pan. I've got a couple layers of paper towels here. Just pat them dry. So before we start skewering the beef, let's work on the vegetables. So I'm going to start off with zucchini and a layer of pepper and a layer of onion. All right, so while I'm doing this, how about if I put you to work rather than just staring at me? I need you to pack all this meat onto those 2 skewers so you can fit them nice and tight together, and that way they won't dry out.
I have a question.
Yeah,
would you like me to do it longitudinally or through the center?
It doesn't really matter as long as they stay in kind of 2-inch pieces. Okay. Once I'm finally finished with all this, I'm going to go ahead and heat up the grill, and then we'll be ready to put the skewers right on. All right, so Chris, the grill is all heated up. I preheated the burners, turned them all to high, let this grill heat up for 15 minutes, and that grate is good and hot. So just one more thing to do. Just want to scrape off any kind of residue that's on there. I think some of your old bad beef kebabs have been on here earlier. All right, in addition, I want to oil these grates. So this is just a wad of paper towels and some vegetable oil. Just dip it in the oil, not too much. You don't want to go crazy because we're going to run this right over the grates. If we had too much oil on there, it could cause a little bit of a fire. So this helps to create a non-stick surface, and you know, the more you do it, the more slick the surface gets. All right, we're going to put these right on to the hot burners. There we go, meat goes on. It's great. And the vegetables as well. All right, so we're going to grill these with the lid down until the meat registers about 125 degrees, and that's for medium rare. It's going to take about 12 to 16 minutes. Now, of course, I'm going to go in there every 3 or 4 minutes and rotate those kebabs so that they color evenly. All right, let's get a look what's under here. Hey, they're still there. So that was about 16 minutes, and of course, I rotated them, and you can see what a beautiful char they have. So the meat is done at this point. If you wouldn't mind handing me that platter. That's great, thank you. Awesome. And if you could tint that with foil, we're going to let the meat rest for about 10 minutes. Allow those juices to reabsorb into the meat fibers. Make sure that the beef is good and juicy. But the vegetables, we're going to cook them a little bit longer because they may look nice and charred on the outside, but they're still raw on the inside.
So veggies take more time than meat?
That's right. Who would have thought?
Not me, evidently.
Well, we're going to turn the heat down to low here, and we're going to let these cook for about another 6 minutes. I'll go ahead and give them a turn now, and I'll turn them again in a couple of minutes. Just want them to get a nice char on them and be slightly soft. So another 6 minutes, the lid down, should do it.
Sounds easy enough.
It is easy
Even
enough.
I can do it.
Yes, you can. All right, Chris, the magic moment. Get to eat the kebabs. They look great. They're rested, so the meat is still nice and juicy. 2 or 3 pieces of beef?
3 would be nice.
All right.
Yeah.
And you got to eat your veg.
Well, these veg are worth eating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice
Oh, look how gorgeous I mean, the char is beautiful. And inside,
done.
medium rare.
These are incredibly tender. Do I have to eat my veg too? Or?
Well, you're not going to say that. You're going to say, can I have more veg?
Those are delicious. So fabulous beef kebabs start with fabulous beef. So we use flat meat, which comes from the sirloin, cut it into 2-inch chunks, and then we made this great marinade with salt, tomato paste, and beef broth. On the grill, cook everything on high for about 15 minutes or so. Beef comes off, set it to low, vegetables finish cooking, and there you have it. Let it sit for 10 minutes, and you have the juiciest, most tender beef kebabs you'll ever have. There you have America's Test Kitchen, your kitchen, Bridget's favorite and the best I've ever eaten, beef kebabs, also with veggies. Here's my life in yogurt in a short 30 seconds. I used to eat full-fat yogurt like Brown Cow, which was delicious. Then I said, well, maybe I'm getting a little older, I'll eat 2% yogurt. And then I went to 1% fat yogurt. And then I finally went to 0%. And I woke up one morning and realized I was eating spackle. There was no flavor, and the texture was just awful. So I asked Jack here in the Tasting Lab to figure out whether there is a good lower-fat yogurt that I would actually enjoy.
I promise you will not have to eat spackle.
Oh, good.
These are Greek yogurts. So this is the big trend in supermarkets, is that the thicker Greek yogurts are really taking over. And the main difference between Greek yogurt and regular yogurt is that it is strained. They add the bacteria to the milk, the curds form, and then they strain off the whey. Except some brands are cheating. Because when you strain off the liquid, you need 4 times as much milk to make the same carton of yogurt. So it can be very expensive. So some companies, American companies, have figured out they could add pectin or gelatin or other things and not strain off the whey. So we did a little experiment. So this is the winning yogurt, and you'll see there's just a very small amount of liquid that came out from letting this sit overnight in the refrigerator. They are straining this yogurt back at the factory to get rid of most of the liquid. Now this is the losing yogurt, and you'll notice that we got quite a lot of liquid that came out of this. And this brand is actually using pectin and inulin, which is a tasteless dietary fiber,
Right.
so that you don't at first notice that it has all of this liquid in it. If you don't remove the whey, it's a much more acidic yogurt. And Greek yogurt's supposed to be mild and not quite as sharp as American yogurt. So, anything that you're liking, not liking here?
I like this a lot. The texture's not as pasty. It tastes alive versus something that was been dead for a long time, sitting in the refrigerator since 6 months ago. So, I mean, I would definitely pick that. Now we'll find out it's the worst, but anyway.
Yeah. You like to be fooled by American food manufacturers.
I like this. This is very good.
That's the one with the pectin and the dietary fiber in
I
it.
loved it.
Well, clearly you're not the market for
It's
Greek
loose.
yogurt.
It's watery.
Isn't
Okay,
it?
the other three, let's start here.
That would be our winner.
That was the winner?
This is Olympus. This is actually the only import. This is actually made in Greece. All the rest of them are now being made in the United States. We felt like this had a very mild flavor, had a great texture. Not sure that I convinced you. The rest of the tasting panel was convinced.
Oh, I love this. This is really good.
Well,
And this one was?
this is made by Dannon, so their entry into the Greek yogurt field. This was in the top half of the pack, did well. Under there is probably the most popular brand.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right, that was a Greek brand, still a Greek brand, but they're now making their yogurt in the United States. That was in the middle of the pack. We thought didn't have quite the right texture that we wanted, but was good yogurt as well. But the Olympus was everyone's favorite except for yours.
Well, if you're going to believe me, I'm the guy with the bow tie. I would buy Greek Gods. I think it's much better. But everybody else here in America's Test Kitchen liked Olympus. 0% fat. I guess it had a better flavor and slightly better texture. That's what they tell me anyway. So I'm here to announce today at America's Test Kitchen is Greek Diner Day. And you're here to show us something about Greek food. But first, a little bit about Greek diners and how they got started. There were hundreds of thousands of Greeks who emigrated from Greece to this country in the early part of the 20th century, and they started Greek diners. They were used to drinking coffee and ouzo at sort of diner-like environments in Greece. And today in New York, there are over 800 diners, 500 of which are Greek diners. So they have huge menus, and they have this great cross-cultural mix of cheeseburgers and French toast on one hand, Greek dishes on the other hand. So it was just a huge success story. Today, we're focusing on just one of those.
Right, spanakopita. So unfortunately, what you also get in the Greek diners today is kind of a watered-down mess. Ideally, spanakopita
In
should
some
have,
Greek diners.
in some, yeah, not all.
So this is Greek tragedy.
This is tragedy. It's worse.
So we're going to try to make this better than that. Okay.
Right. The main problem with this is the moisture in the spinach. What I have here is 20 ounces of adult curly leaf spinach. So we first need to cook it, and the best way to do it is by steaming it in the microwave. I'm adding water to it, just a quarter cup. Now the water is going to help the whole thing steam and cause the spinach to wilt. And we're going to cook it for 5 minutes in the microwave, then it'll come back to the counter and rest for another minute. All right, Chris, so this spinach has been microwaved for 5 minutes, and now it's sat on the counter for a minute. So I'm going to just dump it into this colander here in the sink. It's reduced in volume by a third at least. We'll just begin to press on it to get some of the surface water out of it. But there's still a lot more in here, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to chop it. And the chopping does two things. It breaks the spinach into bite-sized pieces, so it's more easy to eat in the spanakopita. And second, it ruptures some of the cell walls within the spinach, so it continues to release water. We're also able to leave the stems on this adult spinach. Since we were chopping it fine, they were perfectly unnoticeable when you ate the final product. And now, to coax the last bit of water out of it, we're going to throw it into a clean kitchen towel, squeeze it over the bowl.
So there's still a lot of water left.
Right.
I guess so.
Yeah. And all that otherwise would end up in the spanakopita. So we'll just transfer the spinach right to a clean bowl. So we have 12 ounces of crumbled feta cheese. Then on top of that, we're adding 3/4 of a cup of Greek yogurt, 4 sliced scallions, a couple of eggs, and this will act as the binder, a 1/4 cup of chopped fresh mint, 2 tablespoons of chopped fresh dill, a teaspoon of lemon zest, a tablespoon of lemon juice, 3 cloves of garlic minced, 1 teaspoon of nutmeg, 1/2 teaspoon of ground black pepper, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and for a little heat, 1/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne. And we just mix that together until it's fully incorporated. All right, Chris, now that we have the filling made, we're going to start building the spanakopita, and that requires working with phyllo dough. Phyllo is an unleavened dough made out of flour, water, and lemon juice or vinegar. All right, so this is one 8-ounce package. It came in the 1-pound box of 14 by 9 inch phyllo. And this is 7 tablespoons of butter. So we're going to begin by brushing a 14 by 9 inch rectangle on a parchment-lined baking sheet here. So then we're going to just take this phyllo sheet and we're going to lay it right down in the center here. We're going to brush it with some of the melted butter. This stuff can tear and split a little bit. You keep in mind that we're going to be doing 10 sheets on the bottom for the bottom crust. So if I get a little tear here on the side, it doesn't matter. It's going to be covered up. And using a baking sheet, this is where our recipe is different from others. Most of them are always baked in a 13 by 9 inch baking dish, and it's got those high, thick walls, and none of the moisture that's in the spinach can really escape. So the bottom crust really has no chance of getting crisp whatsoever. By using the baking sheet, we're able to allow for that evaporation while the spanakopita bakes. So we're going for a total of 10 layers here, brushing each with butter. And once you get going, it goes pretty easily. Now we're going to take our filling, and we're going to just put it right in the center there, and we're going to spread it to an even thickness, and we're going to leave about a 1/4 of an inch border all the way around to account for a little bit of expansion as it cooks. And this goes on much the same way as the bottom crust, with one major difference. We're going to brush it with butter, but then we're also going to sprinkle it with a couple of tablespoons of pecorino cheese. The reason we use it in the top layers is because when it was finished baking, the layers of phyllo are very light and flaky, and they brush off and fall apart very easily. So by putting a little bit of pecorino in between these first 6 layers, it kind of melts as it cooks and holds the whole thing together.
It's Elmer's.
Right, right. It holds it together. We're going to do this to the first 6 layers. We're going to stop shy of the last 2, which will just get the butter. And that's because it'll make scoring it a lot easier. Okay, and we're going to sprinkle on our last bit of cheese here. So these last 2 layers of phyllo go on with just butter, no cheese in between them. The reason I leave the cheese out of these last 2 layers is because I'm going to score this right before it goes in the oven. And the cheese was there in between those layers. The
layers would move around.
They'd move around.
This way they stick together.
Exactly. All right, so now that we've got the last layer down, we're just going to pat it lightly with our hands, kind of compress the whole thing, and this will make slicing a little bit easier. And now I'm going to score it with a tip of a paring knife. I'm going to cut it into 24 equal pieces, where they should be approximately equal.
Can you do the math?
I'm going to 6 by 4. Okay, so 1 down the center. We're just going to score through the first 3 layers approximately. Some sesame seeds, 2 teaspoons. This adds a little bit of flavor and gives it a nice look. And now we're going to put it into a preheated 425-degree oven in the lower middle rack, and it's going to cook for 20 to 25 minutes. Okay, Chris, so this has been resting on the counter here for about 10 minutes. Still a little bit warm. I'm just going to slide it onto the cutting board by tugging.
Well, you get it on looks.
Right.
And we're going to taste it, but it looks great. Okay.
It's okay. Just a piece for you.
So is it with my hands, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the 2 of us. Nobody's watching, so it's just me and you.
Well, it looks great. It's very flaky on top.
Crusty bottom.
Mmm.
Not bad?
Yeah, not bad. Not bad, it's not bad. It's delicious. So our fabulous homemade spanakopita has 3 secrets. One is get all the water out of that spinach. The second thing is on the top layers, the phyllo dough, we actually use a little pecorino between some of those layers, which means when you cut into it, it doesn't all break apart and gets too flaky. And the big secret was actually baking it in a baking sheet, not in a 9 by 13 casserole. That means the bottom crust actually stays nice and flaky. So from America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen, a fabulous recipe for homemade spanakopita. And if you would like to get today's recipes, tastings, and testings, and watch selected episodes of America's Test Kitchen, go to our website, americastestkitchentv.com. Also follow us on Twitter. I tweet.
I don't.
I'm a tweeter. And also on Facebook. This is excellent.
America's Test Kitchen is brought to you by DCS by Fisher & Paykel. America's cooks rely on innovation and culinary precision. DCS by Fisher & Paykel, offering premium indoor and outdoor kitchen appliances.
And by Kohler, inspiring home chefs to create a professional-level kitchen with innovative sinks, faucets, and cook centers. Kohler.
And by Diamond Crystal Salt for the professional chef and those who want to cook like one. Diamond Crystal, the gourmet choice. By Cooking.com, an online retailer for the kitchen enthusiast. If it's not in your kitchen, try ours. By Plum Amazins, diced dried plums from Sunsweet for amazing recipes. By Miracle Grow, the gardener's friend. By California Avocados. And by Chateau San Michel.